All right. Quick introduction. My name is Will. I work for an education nonprofit called Mouse, and the tool that I'm going to share with you today is a custom GPT that my colleague Jameli and I created to help us automate some of the more time-intensive work of lesson creation. So we created a custom lesson planning GPT to help speed up basically everything that we're
Olá,
doing.
vocês sabem.
And rather than show it to you in Chat GPT, because that's kind of just one big block of text, I actually put it in a separate Google Doc that I'm going to put in the chat if anybody wants to see this and kind of use it as a guide for them. We spent about an hour writing this prompt together, or these instructions for our custom GPT, beginning with a broad overview of the role, saying what it is, what is it going to be doing, and feeding it some background information. I've italicized here that there's an overview of the course in an attached file that it should be using for guidance. And then just to be safe, I added in a broad topics description so that way it had in two places the major things that it would be covering. And then I gave it the basic task that I wanted it to do. So it's going to take input from the user on the topics for the lesson and creates a lesson plan as well as necessary curricular materials. We thought that this was critical, that it needs to take that input from the user because the first time we tried doing this, it was actually just spitting out a whole big lesson on its own without really asking for any more details. So we wanted to kind of slow it down and allow it to interact with the user more. The next sections were the goals for the lesson. Basically, what do we think a good lesson looks like? Because there are a lot of things out there online that are probably in regular Chat GPT's knowledge base that could clutter it. So we attached our own instructional philosophy, but we could have also gone online and found articles or PDFs that specifically stated the different things that make for a really strong lesson and attached those instead. Then we described what the lessons are going to look like in terms of how will they be divided. And then this section right here, the detailed instructions, this is really the meat of our instructions, because we wanted it to be a collaborative thing where the user has a lot of input. You can see that we've bolded a few places where it asks for approval before moving on. And if it doesn't get approval, then it's going to ask what should be amended and make those edits. This was really helpful for us because the first time we built it, it gave us again whole lessons that didn't quite align with what we wanted. So we wanted to slow it down, build in those checkpoints, which was really, really helpful for us. And the last thing that I really want to highlight here is this last section, which is about formatting. When we first created it, depending on the day, it seemed the format would be different. Sometimes we would get emojis, sometimes we would get long blocks of text, other times we would get bullet points. And so we wanted it to have a specific style for our formatting. And so we said professional manner, bolding text to mark different sections. The type of language should be academic language for early high school students. And of course, do not use emoji within your output unless the user asks for them. And so that was what gave us a successful output regularly. And I've linked at the bottom of that this conversation that was had with it. And so you can see here it asks for some information, then it tells you what it's going to do. So I answered the questions, gave me all of those basic things that I was looking for, and it asks if we're good to continue. And that continued pretty much for the entire time. But I wasn't happy with one part of this response that I got. So I asked it to update the analogy that I didn't like. It gave me another one I didn't like. And eventually it said, okay, here's a couple examples, pick one that you like. And so then from there, it kind of carried on the rest of the way until we got to the end where it asked me if I wanted it to be combined into one document. You can't see the document for some reason in the shared link that I sent, but then it compiled it all into one thing for me. Um, Actually, yes, it compiled it all into one lesson plan document that I could copy and paste, and then it continued to ask for other materials that I wanted. So that's kind of a brief